A mother spent 3 years in an Australian prison murdering a baby that a wild animal had carried into the desert. The whole nation was certain she did it. The evidence was a stain in her car that experts swore was her daughter's blood. There was only one problem. It was not blood at all. This is how bad science convicted an innocent woman, and how one small piece of clothing set her free. August 1980. A young family camps at the base of Uluru, the Great Red Rock in the heart of Australia. Lindy and Michael Chamberlain, a pastor and his wife, have 3 children with them. The youngest is a 9-week-old girl named Azaria. It is an ordinary family holiday, until night falls. Lindy puts the baby to sleep in the tent. Minutes later she hears a cry. She runs back and sees a dingo, a wild Australian dog, shaking something in the tent doorway before vanishing into the dark. The bassinet is empty. Azaria is gone. Her scream would echo for a decade. Hundreds of people search the desert that night. They find dingo tracks. They find the baby's blood-soaked jumpsuit a week later, near a dingo lair. But they never find Azaria. And in a country where nobody could quite believe a dingo would take a child, doubt began to grow. The first inquest agreed with Lindy. In 1981 the coroner ruled that a dingo had taken Azaria, and cleared the parents completely. It should have ended there. But the public was uneasy. Lindy did not cry the way people expected. She was calm, religious, strange to them. And the press smelled a story. Rumors spread like fire. People whispered that Azaria meant sacrifice in the desert. That the Chamberlains belonged to a strange sect. None of it was true, but it did not matter. A mother who did not perform her grief correctly had become a monster in the public mind. The law would follow the mood. So the police reopened the case. This time they did not look to the desert. They looked at the family car. Their new theory was grim. Lindy had cut the baby's throat in the front seat, hidden the body, and blamed a dingo. To prove it, they needed to find blood inside that car. And they said they found it. A forensic biologist testified that a spray pattern under the dashboard was arterial blood from an infant. Tiny hands. A cut throat. It was a horrifying image, delivered with the authority of science. The jury had no way to know how fragile that science really was. But the test used to identify fetal blood was crude and easily fooled. What the expert called baby's blood was later shown to be something else entirely. A sound-deadening compound sprayed into the car at the factory. A chemical stain. Not human. Not blood. The centerpiece of a murder case was a manufacturing spray. None of that was known in 1982. The trial opened in Darwin, and the whole country watched. Lindy was 7 months pregnant. Prosecutors built their case on the stain, on scissors that could have made the cuts, and on the idea that no dingo was strong enough to carry a baby away. The defense fought back with the truth. Dingoes were predators. The tracks were real. The jumpsuit told the story. But the science of the prosecution sounded certain, and certainty is persuasive. Against a stain that experts called blood, a grieving mother's word felt like a defense that had already lost. On October 29, 1982, the jury returned. Guilty of murder. Lindy Chamberlain was sentenced to life in prison with hard labor. Michael was convicted as an accessory. She gave birth to her daughter days later, in custody, and the child was taken from her arms. The nation exhaled, satisfied. For years Lindy sat in a cell, the woman Australia loved to hate. Comedians mocked her. Strangers were sure of her guilt. She maintained, without wavering, the same account she gave on the first night. A dingo had taken her baby. No one in power was listening. Until the desert gave up one last clue. In 1986, a British tourist fell to his death while climbing Uluru. When searchers recovered his body, they found something nearby, half buried at the base of the rock. A tiny knitted jacket. It was the matinee jacket Azaria had been wearing the night she vanished. The jacket the prosecution had claimed never existed. That jacket changed everything. It was found in a known dingo area, exactly where a dingo would have carried the child. The physical evidence now matched Lindy's story and contradicted the state's. Within days she was released from prison while the case was reopened. The stain theory was collapsing. A royal commission tore the forensic evidence apart. The famous arterial spray was not blood. The tests had been unreliable and overstated. Piece by piece, the science that had convicted her was exposed as wrong. In September 1988, the courts quashed the convictions entirely. Lindy and Michael were formally acquitted. Think about what that means. A mother told the truth from the very first night, and the machinery of justice spent 8 years calling her a liar. Not because the facts were against her. Because a stain was misread, and a nation had already decided how a grieving woman should behave. The legal lesson here is about the weight we give to forensic certainty. An expert in a lab coat said the word blood, and a jury treated it as fact. But an opinion is only as strong as the method behind it. When the method is flawed, confidence becomes a weapon aimed at the innocent. And there is a second lesson, quieter but just as dangerous. Lindy was tried twice. Once in a courtroom, and once in the newspapers. The trial by media decided she was guilty before the jury ever did. When the public wants a villain, the presumption of innocence is the first thing to disappear. In 1992, the Australian government paid Lindy Chamberlain over $1 million in compensation. Money for the years, the child taken at birth, the reputation destroyed. But no payment could return what a wrong verdict costs. The time was gone. The certainty of a whole country had cost her everything. The story did not fully close until 2012. A fourth and final inquest formally ruled what Lindy had always said. Azaria died as the result of being attacked and taken by a dingo. 32 years after that scream in the night, an official death certificate finally told the truth. Lindy Chamberlain lost her daughter, her freedom, and years she could never recover, all to a single misread stain and a country that judged her face instead of the facts. The dingo case became the most infamous miscarriage of justice in Australian history. A warning wrapped in a mother's grief. A dingo took her baby. She said it that night, and every night after, and she was telling the truth the entire time. It took bad science 8 years to be undone, and a small jacket in the sand to do it. This has been Verdict Files. If this story held you to the end, subscribe. The next file is already open.